People ask me all the time what kind of jewellery tools I use to make my jewellery. You'd be surprised actually that I don't use that many. A lot of people think that I might use a jewellery jig, but I don't get on with those, so I never bothered with those. But yeah, most of the time it's just a few simple tools that I use and my trusty hands. So yeah, I thought I'd go through with them today and show you which ones I use. So first off, I use my round nose pliers all the time. They are my favourites. I've had them for nearly 20 years. They're quite worn out and I've lost the spring in the middle, but I find them really comfortable in my hand, and that is really important when you're making jewellery. I tend to open and close them like that rather than the spring. It's really important that you have got nice comfy handles. I do find that the cheaper types of pliers that you can buy when you're starting out, everybody starts with these, but trust me, they are going to hurt your hands when you've been making spirals for an hour or so. You're going to have big blisters and they're going to cut into your hands, and they're just really not very comfortable. Whereas the ones with a curve handle on them are just a bit more comfortable in your hands, because you do need to look after your hands when you're making jewellery. It is quite tough on your hands. I've got kind of lumps here and there from doing it for 20 years. So yeah, really look after your hands and make sure you have the best tools for your hands. And if they do start to hurt, give up for the day and come back for another day, because you need to look after those hands. So anyway, I digress. My round nose pliers are my favourite. I use them for making loops, making jump rings, starting off the spirals, and getting that really tight circle at the beginning. I then swap it over to my nylon pliers. These are basically flat nose pliers, but they have these nylon covers on them, which will then turn the spirals for me without marking the wire, which is really important because obviously I don't want lots of little dents all over the spirals. I do have 3, so these are very old ones. I tend to use these now if I need to straighten a piece of long wire, especially if it's thick and it's got a few dents in it. I don't want to ruin my best pair, so I will use my older pairs just to iron out those kinks to start with, and then I might finish it off with my good pair. But I don't want to ruin these because these really are just for turning my spirals. I have my bent nose pliers. These ones I will use for opening and closing jump rings, for putting on my lobster clasps. When I'm making a copper wire wrap, I might need to pull a wire through, so I will pinch it with this and pull. So yeah, they're a bit of a go-to pair of pliers, but actually I didn't buy these until about 5 years ago. And that was a bit of a game changer for me once I bought my bent nose pliers. Before that, I was just using my flat nose pliers for all those tasks. But yeah, once I changed over to these ones, I realized how much easier life was made by these. So now I will just use the flat nose pliers if I need to hold one of my thicker jump rings, and then I can use this one to close it shut, which makes it just a bit easier to do. And then I'll use these if I need to hold a jump ring, and then I'll use my little file to file the sharper side down that you always get, so that I can make sure I get a nice flush closed jump ring. So yeah, I have a set of these little jewellery wires. They do come with handles. These jewellery files. I tend to just use the flat one most of the time for my type of jewellery, just to blunt off those sharp edges so that there's nothing sharp on the necklace. I then have this ring tool, not sure what these are called. They make little rings, jump rings. I tend to use that size for making the ring that goes at the end of the necklace, and this one to make jump rings on my larger necklaces. That one I find is too big for my smaller finer necklaces jump rings, so again I always use my round nose pliers to make jump rings with. I have 2 types of flush cutters. So I have a larger one for all my 1.5 to 1.25 mil wires, and then I have the smaller ones, very old and squeaky, and yes, they are those small handles because I just like these ones for cutting all the jump rings up. I've used them for years, but yeah, they're for the finer wire. So you have a flat side on one side which will cut your wire straight, and then this curvy side inside will give it that angle. So when you're working off a reel of wire, Obviously one side is always going to cut flat, and then the other side will cut with an angle, so that's when you need your little trusty file to come in and file the angled bit down. I have two types of hammers. So I have a brass head hammer. This just is a little bit softer, so when I'm hammering the finer work to work harden it, once I've made the spirals, it's just a bit softer and it won't dent it quite so much. And then I have my larger chasing hammer, which I use for flattening the thicker wire, the 1.5 wire flat, and then you chase it out just to make the edges a little bit thinner as well. And then sometimes I'll use the ball side a bit like this to make little dents and texture in the wire. I do have a textured hammer as well with its different heads, but I don't tend to use this very much in my jewellery. Maybe one day I will. You never know, diversify into something else and I might use it, but yeah, I don't tend to use that one very often. Then I have my garden dibber, which my husband made on his pole lathe. This I just use to make rings, or if I want a circular pendant, so it gives me a nice circle with the wire to work with, or if I'm making, say, a copper wire wrap, I might have made the edge around the edge and then I want to shape it into a circle so I can then pop my stone in. So yeah, that's quite a trusty tool to use. Obviously when I'm hammering I need my steel block, which I only have a small one. There are larger sizes. I've had this for my whole jewellery making career, so nearly 20 years, and also I've had this one. I pop it on there just to keep it still. It does still slide about, but it doesn't matter. I work with that. And then I also put it on this piece of foam, which just makes it a little bit quieter. When you're hammering 100 spirals at a time, you tend to get your family moaning at you saying, will you shut up with that hammering? So I tend to put it on this, so it just dulls it down a little bit on the table. You'll notice the difference if you just put that straight on a table. Some people put it on a beanbag, some people do it on their laps, but I don't know how they manage to do that without it bouncing all the time. So yeah, I put those two down on the table, and that just makes it a little bit quieter. So over the years I have also collected various other flush cutters and round nose pliers, but again, you pick up some tools, you buy them thinking you'll get a new tool and you get, I don't really like this one. This one used to have nylon heads on them. Didn't get on with that at all. Don't know what happened to the nylon heads. And this one I just don't get on with. It's one of those things. This one, you make rings out of it, and then it gives you that little bent loop on it that you want for when you're doing earrings and things, and you just want the loops to hang down straight. Again, didn't really get on with this because I found the edges dented the wire and made a mark, so I didn't like that. Don't use that very often. My ring sizer, I use that sometimes when I'm making rings. I do a few rings, I don't do many. I do wire wraps like snake rings, adjustable rings. So obviously I need all the different sizes for that, so I use my ring sizer. I bought this little tool which is for making jump rings. Didn't get on with that one. You have to hold the wire and then turn it round, and I just found it moved too much, so I prefer my trusty round nose pliers for that job. I do have some ring sizer rings, but I don't tend to make closed rings, so I don't tend to use that very often. And then I have some pin vices, but I don't use those. They're clearly not, because they're still in their package. So that is everything that I use for my jewellery making. Oh, I also bought these as well, but I don't tend to use these very often because I just prefer my trusty wooden dibber. So that's all the tools I use for jewellery making. If you found that video interesting and useful, if you're starting off making your jewellery for the first time and you're wondering what sort of tools you'll need, basically if you're going to do spirals and simple wire jewellery, get yourself some flat nose pliers, some nylon pliers, some bent nose pliers and some cutters, and you're good to go. And then if you want to then hammer things, obviously you're going to need a hammer of some description and a steel block. Everything else you can find in your house. But these 4 tools are my go-to tools I use every day for every piece of jewellery I make. So they're basically all you'll need. So if you found that video interesting, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, be nice, because I'm not very good at doing these videos. I don't do them very often, but I try to get some out when I can. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to know any more about the tools that I use, please let me know. I'll also be making lots more videos about the jewellery that I make and show you some how-to videos and some feature videos of pieces that I've done. So please tick the subscribe button to see more. Thank you. Bye.